Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some evil. This society needs a spectacle.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 18th of January 2020, we look at shame, S-H-A-M-E, shame, with the view being that the ruling regime, the Unity Labour Party government, their agents and enablers, in their arrogance and pomposity, have no shame and will do and say anything to try to hoodwink, fool, deceive, bamboozle the people, in particular the electorate of St Vincent and the Grenadines. The Cambridge Dictionary defines shame as an uncomfortable feeling of guilt or being ashamed because of your own or someone else's bad behavior. From that definition, it is worth noting that shame involves an uncomfortable feeling. Shame involves guilt, an uncomfortable feeling of guilt. Shame involves behavior which is bad. Shame involves your own bad behavior or someone else's bad behavior. This week's view is triggered by a plethora of comments, primarily on social media, in which the agents and enablers of the ruling regime shamelessly and ludicrously try to convince Vincentians that the proposal of the opposition New Democratic Party to reduce VAT, value-added tax, by 3% from 16% to 13% will not be beneficial to them. It has been reported that the Minister of Finance has been the one leading such spurious narrative, and that the agents and enablers, as if in a state of unconscious incompetence, chime in. We, here on A View from the Outside, genuinely hold the view, so much so that we are convinced that Vincentian, especially the electorate, deserve much better than what is served up to them as representation. It must be remembered that when the regime increased VAT from 1% in May 2017, they later claimed that the Treasury of St Vincent and the Grenadines raked in approximately $10 million per year as a result of that 1% increase. By that same reasoning, therefore, it can be deduced that a 3% decrease in VAT will leave Vincentians generally with approximately $30 million per year in their pockets. It therefore means that Vincentians will be better off. That being the case, therefore, utterly false and without shame, they propagate the narrative that Vincentians will not benefit from a 3% decrease in VAT. It has been said that it is such false narrative, completely without shame, which the regime has used over the years to prey, P-R-E-Y, on vulnerable and unsuspecting Vincentians. Many have said that it is a crying shame what they do to Vincentians. But many have also concluded that the sad thing is that they have no shame. It is with that thought that we, on A View from the Outside, will now highlight some of the many other instances when it has been said that the regime, its agents, and its enablers have acted without shame. These are not necessarily in chronological order. There is no doubt that Vincentians, and in fact the Caribbean and the rest of the world, will remember when in 2008 the Prime Minister of the country was accused of rape and sexual assault by a female police officer while she was on duty guarding him and his family. Everyone will remember when he, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Legal Affairs, and the Minister of National Security, without shame, breached all protocol and legal conventions and publicly named that police officer. Everyone will remember too that their political party, the ULP, without shame, held a rally to show support for the Prime Minister. A rally which was then and up to now referred to as a rape rally. It is worth noting that the female police officer, that said female police officer, languishes on the beat where she was placed immediately after having made the allegations. It is worth noting also that she remains a police constable after more than a decade of having made those allegations. Everyone will remember also that the regime lost miserably the constitutional referendum that was held on the 25th of November 2009. Following those results, it is reported that the Prime Minister, being bruised and battered by the results, disparaged and denigrated the electorate of the country. It is reported that he said that because he didn't give them, the electorate, lumber, cement, and galvanized, they did not vote for him and his party. Well, many believe that it was without shame that they shared out lumber, cement, and galvanized for the general elections of 2010, just 1 year later. And many believe also that such action by them contributed significantly to that election win, so much so that they repeated the practice in a more brazen and shameless way in the 2015 general elections. Vincentians need to be mindful of that practice and need to not allow themselves to fall prey, P-R-E-Y, to such shameless politics. During the election campaign of 2015, referred to earlier, the opposition New Democratic Party, the NDP, announced to the electorate that they will build a new state-of-the-art general hospital with a helipad facility to transport patients, particularly in emergencies. The regime, its agents and enablers, without shame, ridiculed that project and left the electorate with the belief that such project is completely unworkable. Many are now stunned and find it unbelievable at their party's convention last Sunday. The regime's leader, without shame, announced that they will be building a new hospital with helicopter services. He announced it as if that concept is a new one and as if it came from them. Vincentians are reminded to go back to the election campaign of 2015 when the NDP unfolded that project. Since then, their agents, enablers, without shame, have been busy trying to convince the Vincentian electorate that such a project is good for them. It must be noted also that the regime and its enablers did a similar thing when they, without shame, scoffed and derided the Cocoa Project, which was initially proposed by the NDP during the 2010 election campaign, only for them, that the current regime, to wholly embrace that said Cocoa Project less than a year later in 2011. A project which many say is currently managed in a way to milk the farmers of St Vincent and the Grenadines. A project where it seems that farmers are taken advantage of by apparently being subjected to the mercy of the Cocoa Association, where the cocoa pods are harvested in the absence of the farmers by workers of the association, where farmers have no way of knowing how much cocoa is harvested from their fields, and where farmers are then paid a pittance on an irregular basis for their produce. It cannot be forgotten either when the issue of health care came under scrutiny, when it was exposed how poor the state of healthcare is in the country. The regime, its agents and enablers, without shame, went on a crusade telling the Vincentian public that the issue of leadership is more important to them than healthcare, their own health. Also, it must not be forgotten how the regime and its enablers, without shame or embarrassment, went into full gear and disparaged, belittled, and deprecated the medical doctor who exposed the mold infestation at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. They did a similar thing when they baselessly, without shame, discredited and decried the psychologist who, based on her professional experience, concluded that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a rape culture. Interestingly, since that conclusion by the psychologist, since that conclusion was made, the media is replete with headlines of rape and sexual assault perpetuated against women and girls in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Vincentians, it will also help not to forget how the regime, without shame, continues to withhold the results of the country poverty assessment. Don't forget that this is a project which was introduced with much pomp and fanfare, and now they shamelessly withhold the results. Many say it is because of the information that they gathered which will reveal the abject level of poverty which currently exists in the country, why they continue without shame to withhold the report. In this year, 2020, which is most likely to be the year of general elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it will no doubt help Vincentians to remember how the regime, its agents and enablers ridiculed Arnhem Eustace the immediate past opposition leader and the immediate past president of the NDP. Even before he, Anim Eustace, was 70 years old, they claimed that he was too old to continue as leader. Well, pay attention, Vincentians, because now these same players, these same agents and enablers, without shame, without contrition, are telling you, the electorate, that their leader, at 73 years old, is not too old. It is that kind of hypocrisy, that kind of shamelessness, where they show no feeling of embarrassment or guilt, where they show no sign of contrition or uncomfortable feeling for their behavior. Many say their bad behavior, where they act totally without shame. That we, on A View from the Outside, urge all Vincentians to be mindful of the attempts to try to hoodwink, fool, deceive, and bamboozle you. Be mindful also of how the men and women who are meant to be honorable operate without shame. And it may also be worth bearing in mind as well the words of the 17th century German poet Martin Opitz, who said, "Where there is no shame, there is no honor." Until next week, Justin and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. You can also get us on Facebook at A View from the Outside and on YouTube at JMB Horne.